Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard emerges with people from all walks of life who, through their own unique angle, succeed and flourish. Enjoy the ride and welcome to Unique Ways, an audio podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. We got a great guest on today. He's the founder and principal of Q30 Design Inc., a Toronto-based branding, digital, and investor relations communications firm. Please join me in welcoming Peter Scott. Welcome.
Thank you, Thomas. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Let's get going.
Question 1, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
So I am a trained graphic designer. Started off many years ago. So I've been in the business for, I don't know, just say 40 plus years. And so I worked for a corporate design firm in Toronto for a number of years, met a woman who would become my business partner. And we left after 8 years and started Q30 in 1991. And so we had been running that business for 30 plus years as good friends and business partners. And she recently retired and left very amicably. And so I'm now the sole owner and I'm running the business and grooming others to hopefully take over from me one day.
Great. And just a quick note for the audience, if you guys are interested in the Canadian episodes, please check out the episode with Marion Banshees. That's a great one. Question 2, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
An interesting question because, you know, on the surface, I do a lot of what other branding and design firms do. And, you know, it's always hard to try to put yourself in a unique position. I think part of what makes me at this time in my life somewhat more unique is that I have like a long-term perspective on the industry. And I think the from when I started to current day, like any business that's been dramatically affected by technology, there's been like significant, massive evolution. Like basically when I graduated in '83, there was no Mac computers, at least not prevalent in anybody's desktop. And then a few years after I started working, you know, which was really a very much of a sort of a more manual mechanical craft in the early days, then, you know, a single Mac was introduced to the office and we had no idea how to use it. And we took training and then all of a sudden there's one on every desk. And, you know, it really transformed not just the practical part of how we designed, you know, the actual sort of the interface and the change from sort of manual craft to technical craft. It really transformed the speed and it, you know, radically changed a lot of the vendors that we used to use and how we actually generated, you know, production files and things like that. So it really was sort of a baptism by fire because we all knew that this thing wasn't going to go away and we better embrace it. And it was a tough transition. And, you know, we've seen sort of exponential changes over the course of 30 plus years as a business owner where, you know, the prevalence of the amount of digital work we did was like a tiny fraction 15 or 18 years ago. And now it's, you know, if not the lion's share, a big part of the work that we do. So I think having experienced that kind of seismic shift as a business owner gives me a perspective so that when other disruptive things come along like AI, we kind of, you know, we're not as fearful. We are open to the consideration of how it might affect our business. And we look for the positive rather than just the, oh my God, what's happening now perspective.
Great, I love that. Okay, so question 3, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
I mean, I was, if you're talking about graphic design, which I think that's at least the focus of my career, I was really fortunate as a young person, and I now have children who are young adults. And I discovered design at a very early age, meaning early high school. I was just by chance exposed to a very specific course back then that really was the precursor to building a portfolio for art college. And I loved it. And it became a big part of my high school career. I still carried all like the maths and sciences, et cetera, because I wasn't sure if it was going to be a real, you know, paid vocation. But I took as much of the, you know, what we called commercial art back then as I could. And it actually got me a really strong portfolio and into the Ontario College of Art and Design, which is now a university in Toronto. And that launched me on my career. As far as being an entrepreneur, that really was something that is not natural. I'm the youngest of six kids. My family are all, my dad worked for a company for 48 years. He was of that generation. Most of my siblings have been teachers of one sort or another. So being an entrepreneur, I had no one in my circle of family or friends was wired for that. So, but in our business, you kind of reach a threshold where if you can only advance so far because it tends to be a owner operated business. And so I started to realize that for me to sort of get what I wanted out of my career and have the autonomy to build a business that I wanted to build, I was going to have to go it on my own or with someone else. And so that's kind of where I was exposed to that as kind of a default, even though I wasn't, believe me, it was a terrifying proposition.
Great. And some people struggle with number four, but the question is, what does your future look like?
Uh, So, is the future 5 years or 20 years? I would say that my focus now is that I want to build a business that's sustainable. I mentioned I'm a trained graphic designer. I'm not an MBA. I didn't build a business to sell it. I just don't know enough about how to do that. And I love the business, and it's so much a part of me that I want to make a sustainable business. And sustainability means a business that can survive beyond my tenure in it, hopefully, as well as building towards a business that could be, employee owned and ideally would become a sustainable from an environmental standpoint. I'm not sure if your listeners or you are familiar with the B Corp designation. It stands for Benefit Corp. Is that something you're familiar with, Thomas, or?
No, can you talk about it?
Sure. It's a certification that is international. You have to meet really stringent criteria. You have to, in addition to sort of managing the chain of custody of all the work that you do, of the how you sort of interact with clients. I mean, it's how you run your business personally from a sustainability standpoint, tracking your ESG requirements, reporting on them publicly. But it's also very cultural. You're building a business where diversity is embraced, that you're building something that is really an inclusive environment, and it's a really tough certification. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and the great thing about it is that it's so hard, and you have to renew it every couple of years. That it's meaningful as opposed to a lot of other things that kind of are a tick box, or you just sort of say you're going to do. This is you're audited. And so it's something they're working towards, and I think it would be a massive achievement if we could get there. There are a number of Canadian B Corp design firms, but very few. So it really is kind of it's a new international standard that we're working towards.
Nice. Number five, we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
So I think one of the if a good thing can come out of a pandemic, and I'm not sure it can, but for us, it really proved that, I always felt even though we were primarily a digital practice, and we had the ability to work remotely, there was always this fear that somehow things would fall apart if you couldn't have this sort of environment where we all came together all the time. I think what we've discovered being forced to it through a pandemic is that we actually can function in a remote world. But I think it's been long enough post-pandemic that we realized that for us, that hybrid solution is critically important. I toyed with during the pandemic giving up my office and just going fully remote. Many other firms, especially digital firms, were doing that and have continued to do it. But we moved our studio to a bit of a smaller space that it was, sort of custom designed for the new world with no permanent workstations, laptops and plug and play large screens and communal workspaces, et cetera. And we've really enjoyed it. People have come back naturally. We actually share the studio with another design firm, so there's really interesting overlap of skill sets. They're sort of a complementary firm to ours. We're not directly competitive. And I think it's really sort of shaped not just the business and how we work, but I think people's quality of life. Work-life balance is really important, especially to the new generation of designers that I'm hiring. And I think it really provides this opportunity for the best of both worlds. So I think having a shared space, but having the freedom. The other thing is that it's allowed us to really expand our client base. There was a real kind of geography centric mindset. We do a lot of national work in Canada, and we'd always feel like, being in Toronto when it was a Vancouver pitch, we would never be considered strongly enough. And that has really changed. The regionality has gone out of our business. So we're working much more as a true national firm.
Mm, great. Number six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
I think that like any kind of startup, well, first of all, it was my partner and I in one computer. It was that lean for the first year or two.
Mm,
Um, and you're just your head's down, you're in survival mode, and that's the reality of your first 5+ years in business.
mm,
I think it took me a long time to have like to kind of get, it's what's that saying that, spend your time on the business, not in the business, or words to that effect. Uh,
mm,
Having a little bit more of a big picture attitude, like being a little bit more forward looking, not just, what's the next project? How are we going to get it done? Thinking about what you're building towards. I think I would like to give myself permission to spend a little bit more time in shaping the future of my business, not letting it shape me. I think I'm at that point now, but the first 10 or 15 years was just sort of madness. Whether it was too much or too little business, it was always a sense of stress. And I think I didn't give myself that, as I said, that permission to sort of think about the long-term game and what I wanted to get out of it.
nice. Okay. What's a day in your life like?
It's busy, but I like it that way. It's there's no like at this point, my role really is I'm sort of transitioning in the process of transitioning from sort of client management, account management to really kind of leading and mentoring the next wave of leadership that's in the firm. I have 3 VPs that are very involved in sort of taking on the more active role of running the business. So my day is, much less planned. It's a little bit more reactive to what those individuals need from me. I have lots of meetings and emails and, all the regular business stuff. But I am finding now I'm having the ability to think about, new opportunities, new growth areas for the business, and less that kind of triaging work that is designated now to other people to kind of manage.
Great. And eight, lifelong learning is a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Uh, I mean, there's lots of boring things in this answer. I could say like webinars and conferences and that kind of stuff, which are obviously really important, and I do that. I think the thing that's kind of really re-engaged me to the business, which I kind of didn't foresee, is so I mentioned I bought my business partner out about 2.5 years ago. And that's a big deal for a small firm when you're 50-50 partners and you have very overlapping responsibilities, but also my my business partner was, really kind of led the HR part of our business and a lot of the sales and marketing, and I was much more sort of client management. And, I was really worried about losing her and her skill set, and it was tough, but it actually kind of threw me into an area that I personally kind of thought I wasn't very good at and I wouldn't enjoy. And it's actually been the exact opposite. It's kind of re-engaged me to the business. I've been really kind of excited about growing it, having, kind of the complete control to do some, very calculated risks, not big risks, not burn the company down risks, but trying to evolve the business in new and exciting ways. And I think that to me is kept me kind of really engaged. And it's also, hiring new people. We've grown from about, I think, 10 or 11 people when Glenda, my partner, left, to we're 16 and growing probably to 20 over the next year or two. And that's for a firm like ours that has been kind of stable, dozen people plus or minus for 15 years. It's a lot of activity, and I find it kind of honestly exciting and reinvigorating.
Nice. And nine is around tools. Do you use digital and analog tools?
Yeah, I mean, we're the standard. Any sort of design brand and digital design firm uses all the Adobe Creative Suite, the Figma, the Slack, and Google Docs and all that stuff. So there's no interest there. I think what we're doing is, we're in that transition like many other firms where, that sort of the workshop collaborative whiteboarding sessions, we're doing them remotely and in person. And it's really an interesting dynamic because you get different things from that experience. And I don't think one is better over another. There's certain, obviously remote, a virtual allows you to bring people from all over the world to contribute. So it really expands the people, not forcing everybody into a room. But, you do lose a little bit of that in the moment kind of collaboration. So I think the tools are there for that kind of, but I think, I don't think the in-person will ever be eliminated by the digital realm. So I think there is an element of sort of analog or in-person that will always have a place for creative, especially even like behind the scenes with our staff. There's a lot that gets done on our in-office meeting days that it would be very different if we were all on a Zoom call or on a Slack huddle.
Nice. And you talked about this a bit, but work-life balance, life-work balance, how do you deal with it?
It's I don't think as a business owner anybody has it down. I mean, to be perfectly frank, I think when you're an owner founder, I'm never not thinking about the business. Like it's just a question of what you're doing when you're thinking about it. Are you beside a lake or with your family? So um, I I I mean, I found a way to be with my family and to travel and experience life, but I don't ever completely disconnect from the business. And it's a problem, but it's life, and I don't begrudge that because I'm doing something I love. So it's not like it's a horrid task. It's just woven into my how I work every day.
Great. And if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
It's funny when I was like a kid, like a little kid, and creative people often start the first manifestation of being creative is, you can draw or, you can create or craft things. And I was like that. I could draw reasonably well, and that was sort of noticed soon. And it's weird because I was loved mechanical things, whether they were automotive things or, anything that kind of was complex, and I would draw them, and I would, instead of drawing a car from the outside, I'd draw a cross section of a car. So, you know, in my young naive mind, I thought, well, then clearly I want to be an auto mechanic. But, because at that point I didn't know that there was industrial designers who would design products and things like that. So I think that had I not discovered graphic design in an early part of my life, I think sort of three-dimensional design, industrial design would have been something I definitely would have enjoyed. And because I kind of had the maths and sciences, I think I could have done that. And I don't regret it at all, but I think it would be something that I would have had an affinity for, put it that way.
Great. And 12, what would you not like to do with your career?
Well, I mean, I just think about sort of people that are stuck in cubicles with that. I hate Excel spreadsheets. I mean, I'm forced to work in them more often than I like, but I think to me, you have a life that's filled with creativity, and the energy that brings is really important. And if I had to do something that was, even if it was productive, and I like to be productive, but if it wasn't involving creativity, that would just be soul sucking. So, I did entertain at one point, if I didn't get into art college, I would have gone into engineering. And I think that would have been a horrible mistake because I think I would have been a very unhappy engineer.
Nice. And how about a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Uh, it's weird. Not sure how to answer that. I mean, I remember once in a younger stage when I was traveling, and I sort of came up with this thing that, stay away from doing anything or going anywhere that has apostrophe orama attached to it, which basically is like the cheesiest development of anything. So I hate any word with orama. So you'll never see me at Casino Rama or anything else like that, because to me it's sort of it's where happiness goes to die.
Great. And a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Oh, sorry, that was my least favorite. I did it in the wrong order. Okay,
Okay.
sorry, forgive me. I get so that was my least favorite. My favorite word, um, quote or sentence is actually I was on somewhere today. It may have been like LinkedIn, and Simon Sinek, who you probably know that name, your listeners will know he's he's sort of a guru in our world. Um, he said, and he writes, provocatively, obviously, because that's what you do on LinkedIn. He said, "Don't trust companies who put customers first." And I thought, wow, that's a weird thing to say. But reading the post, it was basically his point is, if you put your customers first, then you're putting your employees second. And I think that kind of resonated with me because um, I think as a business owner, we know how hard it is to get clients. We know how hard it is to keep clients. And so you kind of always say kind of yes to clients in some way. You're always trying to over service and that's of course clients love that. And why wouldn't they? And that's what keeps them coming back. But what I found and more now as I have, newer and younger staff is that they need to be valued and appreciated in a way that is equal, that you're negotiating things on their behalf, and that you're not just throwing things at them and setting them up for failure or horrible stress. And it's a work in progress because our business is very deadline oriented and time motivated. So, but I think I'm more and more aware now that if you have happy and engaged employees, it's going to make everything better and your clients will see it, and that will actually have a natural effect of what you're trying to do anyways with them, because they'll be happier to interact with and they'll provide better service. So it's kind of I think it's a provocative statement that actually makes sense when you kind of drill into it a little bit.
Great. And you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Hard to do this without ending up sounding arrogant, but I will. It's a word that is not, I don't know if it's diligent is the word that comes to mind. And I sort of wrestled with this a little bit because um, I am like kind of quietly tenacious. I'm really productive. I like to get things done. I don't stop till they're finished. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's annoying. But I think it's also it is people see that and they know that you will get it done and you will get it done when you say you will. And I think you have to have the level of sort of craft and creativity above that in our world to make sure that they like what you deliver. But I think people know that if I say I can do something or that we can deliver something, that we will. And I think that's for a business that relies on referrals and repeat work, it's critically important.
Hmm. 16. What keeps you up at night?
Tough question for me because I'm not a great sleeper, so everything is my answer. But I mean, it's again, being a founder, you're always worried. As soon as you fix one problem, something else arises, and they may not be insurmountable, but there's always something that requires your attention, whether it's, and I'm at the point now where still when there's a problem with a client or a project, it usually ends up in my lap. And, it takes time to train others to kind of be comfortable, or even for clients to recognize that others can deal with this kind of thing. So at being the owner, you get a lot of the less fun client relationship interactions or interpersonal staff challenges. So it's not hard to have things to worry about, but fundamentally, I love it. So it's just part of what comes with the territory. So sleeping I get enough sleep. It's just not necessarily in straight hours.
Hmm. Okay, final stretch here. What's a dream you're chasing?
I think I mentioned earlier that the B Corp thing, and I really do want to create a business that is that the people, because I've had tremendous, one of the things that I'm most proud of as the founder and business owner is I've had most of my 16 staff have been with me for 10, 15, one of them for 30 plus years.
Hmm.
And that I think is something that makes me very proud. And I would like to sort of reward that because people have committed to the journey and leave them something that has value and can live on, and that they're also can form to their own goals. And I think culturally there's an alignment that we want to do a certain kind of work for a certain kind of client, And I'd love to see that go forward, past. I'm 64 now, Thomas. So, I'm not eager to get out of the business, but I practically won't be in it forever. So I'm trying to set that up so that people feel the ownership motivation that I do, and that's my goal.
Great. And last few here, what inspires you?
Uh, I love, creative people or visual. I love visual things. We're my home, my cottage. They're all, there's a lot of mid-century references. There is. I do like vintage, and I don't like vintage just because it's old and I think it's better. I just think that there is a certain um, quirkiness or tactile feeling that I get from products that have a history. I mean, I work on Macintosh computer, Apple every day. All my whole, phones, everything around me is Apple, and it's beautiful and it's slick and it's lovely and it's a great user interface. So don't get me wrong, but there's a certain sterility that comes with that. And even, the digital, we're not printing much anymore at all. It's all digital products, whether it be web or some other kind of, online deliverable. So there's a lot of tactile part of my craft that has gone away because of the nature of the evolution. So I'm trying to replace that, I think, in my life with things that feel good, like literally feel good, that look beautiful, but also are lovely to touch and have some sort of history to it. So I like stuff like that. That's kind of a long answer for a short question.
Great. And number 19, any advice you'd like to share?
Uh, I think that, I see the wave of young designers that are starting up now. I'm involved in a number of organizations where we kind of co-mentor other design firms, which I love in that it's, when I started, it was highly competitive and it was kind of like cutthroat between design firms. Everything was competitive. Now it just seems much more collegial, at least in my world. And I love that kind of opportunity. And, I think what I did was there was a lot of milestones that like my first year of business. Within the first year of my business, I had my first child. I bought a house. It was just like mayhem. And it's not like I mean, I was fortunate to have all those wonderful occurrences. I would say spread them out if you can, because it's, you sort of miss savoring one thing when you have so many competing things for your attention. So, plan things out a little better if you have an opportunity. Sometimes life throws stuff at you and you have to deal with it. But I would say if you can organize your milestones in a saner way, you might be a little happier in the process.
Great. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you and what's our call to action?
Honestly, it's Q30design.com is the website. It's like the shoemaker's child. It's probably not as up to date as it should be because we're doing that for our clients, but it's a good cross section and you can see a little bit of our work and see the staff and learn a little bit about our philosophy. And we're going to be updating it reasonably soon. I certainly am on LinkedIn, reasonably active. Be careful because there's tons of Peter Scotts in LinkedIn. So you got to better make sure you attach Q30 or you'll find some other rogue entity that looks like me, but not. And I can always, if there's anybody who's really curious about anything, I can be found. My contact is on the website, and I'm happy to chat with anybody who's either on a creative journey, whether they're a designer looking for work or at a crossroads of their own career or looking to start up a business. I'm always happy to share and offer, learnings from my experience.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining today. So great to build out the Canadian side of this and especially on the East. So thanks so much.
Fantastic, Thomas. Thank you, and go Canada. Take care.
If you liked today's podcast, I encourage you to have a listen to other episodes. You can easily find them at uniqueways.ca or wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on social media. And thank you. It's you that makes these great, and it's you who these are for. Stay tuned for more unique ways.